The Tower of London, as you know, is an incredibly historic and special site, and integral to all of that are, in fact, the two chapels, which sort of, in some ways, act as a sort of cement for the whole of the Tower of London. The first one, the original one, was built in the Norman Tower behind me here, and is the Chapel of St John the Evangelist. And that was the private chapel of the royal family for over 600 years, because the top part of the White Tower was the domestic quarters, if you like, of the royal family. So they built a chapel which they would use, and only they would use that chapel and other people by invitation. Of course, there was a large community served the White Tower, and to serve that community was a little chapel built here, this one that's just on my right-hand side, the Chapel of St Peter ad Vincula. This was built in 1520, and I suppose you would say it was built for the soldiers, the cooks, the bottle washers, and all those that lived around the Tower of London and who needed somewhere for their children to be baptised, for them to get married. A little church, a very plain church, a very ordinary church. But interestingly enough, as the years went by, the balance has shifted between the two. Of course, the chapel in the White Tower is a beautiful, plain Norman church and still visited by thousands of people. But today, people are much more interested in this particular chapel because within it are the bodies of nearly 1,800 people, 15 members of the royal family, more buried there than anywhere else in London except Westminster Abbey. And of course, within those 15 royals that are buried there are 3 queens of England. Queen Anne Boleyn, Queen Catherine Howard and Lady Jane Grey. We also have 2 saints of the church, St Thomas More and St John Fisher, and Blessed Margaret Pole. And people come from all over the world. They're absolutely fascinated by this Tudor period. So the two chapels sort of in a way become the cement and something that brings together the whole history of those, particularly in the Tudor period, who were brought here under Henry VIII and others who sadly, it was as the old story goes, come within the Tower of London. You were never quite sure whether you'd actually ever leave the Tower of London, and particularly with your head on. One thing that's very special about these two particular chapels is that they are royal peculiars. In other words, they come under peculiar jurisdiction, and that's been the case for hundreds and hundreds of years. And it's part of a very, very small family. There's Hampton Court, St James's Palace, the Savoy and the Tower of London, this very unique and special little family of royal chapels. And we're very lucky because very occasionally members of the royal family come along and either worship in here or come for some special reason within the Tower of London. Music's always been a really, really important part of the Chapel Royal. When the Chapel Royal went on its royal processions, Henry VIII and Queen Elizabeth I, when they went on procession round the country, or when Henry VIII with the cloth of gold went out, he would take his ecclesiastical household with him. And so the boys or men of the choir would follow with their tent and all their equipment and all their vestments and candles and all the rest of it. And of course they'd take their music with them as well. So since the Chapel Royal's been around, there's always been the finest and most beautiful music sung within the Chapel Royal. In the Tudor period and just around that time, of course, we think of the music of Byrd and Tallis and Tomkins, the great Tudor composers. And we're really lucky because we have a professional choir here that sings every Sunday for us. And as well as using the Book of Common Prayer and the King James Bible, we continue to use lots of the wonderful Tudor music that was part of that particular period. And therefore, it's absolutely wonderful that the 16 want to come and sing here, and they're going to use music, embracing the whole, if you like, the whole period of, you could say, from Queen Elizabeth I to Queen Elizabeth II, and celebrate that also with a newly commissioned piece of music. And that, I think, will fit very beautifully within the context of, you know, the fine and wonderful music that's always been sung in all departments, if you like, or all churches of the Chapel Royal. And we're very excited about that and look forward to them coming. I'm absolutely delighted that Classic FM and the 16 are coming here. What better place to come and listen to fabulous music within this historic site? Please tune in and enjoy it. You couldn't come to a better place.